On my son's wedding day, I woke up and reached for my head. My hair was gone, completely shaved while I slept. On the nightstand beside my bed lay a note written in my son's handwriting. Dad, you look too old for the wedding video. I fixed it. You're welcome. I didn't react at first, but when I later noticed a bank transfer authorization forged for $500,000, I understood the shaved head was only the beginning. What I did next at that wedding changed everything. Hello everyone, thank you for being here today. If you enjoy real-life inspired stories like this, please support us by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Before we begin, keep in mind that this story includes creative elements added for narrative and educational purposes. Names and certain details are fictionalized, but the themes reflect real experiences many people face. I woke on my son's wedding morning with a sense that something was wrong, though I couldn't immediately name it. The early autumn light coming through my window looked the same as always, soft and golden. Outside, the steady sound of waves against stone continued as it always had. Everything appeared normal, yet my head felt strange, heavy, and disoriented, as if I were waking inside a fog. I lifted my hand, reaching automatically for my hair, that familiar gesture I'd done every morning of my adult life, just to feel that I was still myself. My fingers touched nothing but skin. For a second, my mind refused to understand what my hand was telling me. I pressed my palm to my scalp, smooth and bare, then moved my hand slowly, searching. There was nothing there, only skin where 63 years of hair had always been. I sat up too fast and the room tilted. My mouth felt dry, my tongue thick. I steadied myself against the nightstand and waited for the dizziness to fade. When it did, I walked into the bathroom and switched on the light. The man staring back at me was still me, the same gray eyes, the same lines etched by time. But above them was a head completely bare, shaved, clean, pale skin catching the light in a way it never had before. I stood there long enough for the shock to harden into something colder. This wasn't an accident. Someone had done this while I slept, in my own bed, under my own roof. I turned back toward the bedroom, and that's when I noticed the note. It rested on the nightstand, propped against the lamp, a sheet torn from the kitchen pad. The handwriting was unmistakable, the same loose script I'd watched develop from childhood into adulthood. I picked it up and read it again. Dad, you look too old for the wedding video. I fixed it. You're welcome. The words stayed exactly the same. The casual tone didn't soften. It read like a favor, something I should appreciate. My son Ethan had done this. He had come into my room while I slept and shaved my head, then left a note. Not an apology, not an explanation, just a justification for how I would appear on camera. I sat on the edge of the bed, the note still in my hand. The house around me was silent. No voices downstairs, no sounds of wedding preparations, just the quiet of early morning. I'd spent 4 decades working as an architect. I understood structures, understood when foundations shifted and when supports failed. I could recognize the moment before a collapse. That's what this felt like. The phone rang, sharp and sudden, breaking the silence. It was Daniel Harper, my attorney and a close friend for more than 20 years, calling before 7 in the morning. I answered immediately. His voice was tight, controlled in a way that told me something was wrong. I need you at my office right now, he said. When I mentioned the time, he cut me off. This can't wait. It's about your account. There's been activity, significant activity. Then, after a brief pause, he added quietly, and don't tell Ethan you're coming. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, my head still bare, my thoughts scattered. My son had left a note as if none of this mattered, and my attorney was warning me not to trust my own child. I dressed quickly. As I left the room, one thought settled with cold certainty. Whatever was happening had already been set in motion, and I'd been asleep through all of it. The drive to Daniel's office took less than 10 minutes. The town was still quiet, caught between night and morning. I passed familiar streets, trying to arrange my thoughts into something orderly. 3 facts stood out, disconnected but heavy. My head had been shaved. My son had done it. My money was moving. Daniel's office was in an old brick building that had housed law practices for generations. I'd been coming here for over 20 years, through illness, loss, and the ordinary responsibilities of life, but never before dawn on a weekend. I climbed the stairs. His door was open. Daniel looked up as I entered, and his expression shifted, not surprised, but tight with restrained anger. He stood slowly. I forgot, I said quietly. 3 days ago, I had hair. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired, with the calm presence of someone who'd spent a lifetime steadying others. He had known me since before Ethan was born and had stood beside me at my wife Laura's funeral. In all those years, I had never seen him shaken. He was shaken now. He motioned for me to sit. His desk was covered in documents, statements, and forms, all bearing my name. He slid one across to me. It was an authorization filed 6 weeks earlier, approving a transfer of $500,000. My signature appeared at the bottom. It looked exactly like mine, the same slant, the same pressure, yet I knew with certainty I had never signed it. Daniel nodded. The transfer had been scheduled to execute that very morning, timed to the wedding. He had frozen it as soon as he saw it. The receiving account belonged to Ethan and his fiancée, routed through their legal representative. This hadn't been impulsive, it had been planned. I pulled the note from my pocket and handed it to him. He read it twice, his jaw tightening. The handwriting confirmed what we both already knew. 2 violations stood side by side on his desk, my money and my body. He leaned forward, studying me carefully. I looked pale, unsteady. I admitted I felt foggy, like I couldn't fully wake up. He asked if I had eaten or drunk anything unusual the night before. I searched my memory and found nothing, just empty space after dinner. That silence unsettled him. He reminded me that I was never vague about details, that noticing things was part of who I was. We sat there listening to the building settle as morning fully arrived. Finally, he stood and said we needed medical attention immediately, blood work and answers, without delay. Whatever happened last night, whatever caused you to sleep through all of that, whatever is still making you feel foggy, we need answers. Daniel grabbed his keys and pulled on his coat. After the clinic, we're searching your room. If someone gave you something, there could be evidence left behind, anything out of place. He didn't say the word, and neither did I, but it hung between us. Someone had put something into my system, something strong enough to knock me out completely, strong enough to erase hours of memory, and my son had known I wouldn't wake up. The urgent care clinic was almost empty. A nurse took my details without comment, though her eyes paused briefly on my shaved head. Blood draw first, she said. I watched the vial fill, dark red and ordinary, carrying answers I didn't yet know. Results in about 90 minutes. We'll call you. Daniel was already on his feet. We're going to your house. We need to search before anyone else shows up. Wedding preparations would begin soon. Caterers, florists, camera crews. We didn't have time to waste. The drive back took 8 minutes. My bedroom looked exactly as I'd left it, the bed unmade, the bathroom lights still on. Daniel pulled on leather gloves. Where would he put it? He asked. I tried to think the way my son would have, confident, careless. The nightstand, I said. The scotch bottle was still there, a Macallan 18, 3/4 empty, the one my son had brought over Friday night. Daniel lifted it carefully and smelled the opening. I can't tell, he said, but we're keeping this. He sealed it into an evidence bag he'd brought with him. My phone rang at 9. The nurse told us the results were ready. We drove back in silence. The doctor was young, his expression careful. Mr. Carter, your blood shows benzodiazepines. Do you take any sleep medication? I shook my head. Never. The level suggests 2 to 3 tablets, he said. A significant dose. When did you last eat or drink? The question landed differently now. The memory returned in pieces. Friday night, around 10. My son standing in my doorway, holding a bottle. Dad, let's have a drink, he'd said. One last night before I'm married. I'd been surprised, even touched. He sat on the bed and poured 2 glasses. Macallan 18, my favorite. He remembered. To new beginnings, he said. We talked. He asked about his mother, about her laugh, the garden she loved. He'd seemed almost vulnerable. I drank slowly, enjoying the moment. He barely touched his glass. After my second drink, he smiled and told me I should rest, that it was a big day tomorrow. I'd felt warm, grateful. I'd been asleep before he left. The doctor's office snapped back into focus. Daniel was watching me closely. I drank scotch Friday night, I said. My son brought it. I had 2 glasses. He barely drank any. Daniel's eyes went cold. The doctor looked between us. If someone gave you medication without your consent, he said carefully, that's very serious. I know, Daniel replied, already standing. We need copies of everything. Back in the car, we sat in silence, the evidence bag between us. He planned this, Daniel said finally. The timing, the transfer, all of it. I looked out at the gray ocean under low clouds. My son had drugged me, erased my memory, and shaved my head while I lay unconscious. I turned to Daniel. This wasn't impulse. He crushed pills into scotch and watched me drink it. Daniel's voice was flat. Premeditation, every part of it. We let that settle. We're documenting everything, he said. Then you decide what to do about the wedding. I nodded, touching my bare head, feeling the weight of the evidence bag. By tonight, my son would be married. By tonight, he believed he'd be $500,000 richer. He thought his father would be too confused, too embarrassed to react. He was wrong. I'd spent 40 years as an architect. I knew how to read plans, how to spot weak points before collapse. Back at Daniel's office, the air felt different. This wasn't just evidence anymore. It was leverage. He spread everything out. The note, the bottled scotch, the blood test results, the forged documents. Together, they told a complete story. What do you want to do? He asked. I thought through it like a design problem, testing every option. If I went to authorities immediately, there would be interviews, lawyers, claims that I was confused, that I'd taken pills myself. The wedding might be delayed, not stopped. He'd try again later. Canceling the wedding would only buy him time. A private confrontation would go nowhere. He'd deny everything, maybe cry, maybe rage, my word against his, and he was good at performing. I looked at the evidence again. He had drugged me, violated me, and expected me to smile and hand him a fortune. I'm going to the wedding, I said. Daniel froze. I'm going, I repeated. I'll let them believe everything worked. I told him I'd sit in the front row, wait for the moment he invited me up to present the gift, and then tell the truth instead, publicly. That will end it, I said calmly. He ended himself when he put those pills in my drink. Daniel studied me, then nodded. He called the bank, confirmed the freeze, and made copies of everything. One set for me, one for him, one locked away. By the time we finished, it was past 10. I needed to go home and get ready. The wedding was at 4. You're sure? He asked at the door. I'd never been more certain. The drive home took 7 minutes. Through the windows, I could see movement, preparations already underway. I entered through the kitchen. My son and his fiancée, Emily, stood over a seating chart. They looked up. For a split second, both faces went blank. Then the performance began. Emily covered her mouth in practiced shock. Oh my God, Mr. Carter, what happened? My son stepped forward. Dad, your head. I watched them closely. Really watched. Emily's concern was carefully measured. My son's was even better. Concern, affection, sympathy, all of it was staged. I had a small accident, I said evenly. But I'm fine. I'll be ready. I caught the briefest look between them, a flicker that lasted less than a second. Relief. They thought I'd accepted it. You still look distinguished, Emily said smoothly. Very modern. Thank you, Emily. I turned to my son. Congratulations. This is going to be a day you'll never forget. He smiled, a real smile. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. I nodded and headed for the stairs. Behind me, Emily whispered something. My son laughed quietly. They had no idea. I went to my room and closed the door, standing for a moment in front of the suit I'd bought for this day. Charcoal gray, my wife Laura's favorite color on me. I laid it out on the bed. In a few hours, I would put it on, go downstairs, sit in the front row, and watch my son marry a woman who had helped him violate his own father. Then, when they invited me to speak, when they handed me the microphone, expecting emotion and a generous check, I would give them something else. The truth, every word of it, in front of everyone. They wanted a performance. I would give them one they would never forget. From my bedroom window, I watched my home turn into a stage. It began with the camera crews. Not 1 or 2, but 5, maybe 6, setting up at angles I recognized immediately. Optimal sightlines, maximum coverage. They weren't documenting a wedding, they were producing content. Emily directed them like a film set, phone in one hand, gesturing toward the garden. No, that angle makes the house look dated. Shift left. I want the ocean in every frame. I stayed where I was, watching, learning. Around 11, I noticed what was missing. The photographs of Laura that usually sat on the mantel, the hall table, the piano, all gone. I went downstairs while the crew was outside and found them stacked face down in the coat closet, hidden behind winter jackets. She had erased my wife from our home for the aesthetic. I put them back, every single one. By noon, my son was on the phone in the library, the door half open. It should be there. The transfer was supposed to execute at 7 this morning. Check again. I heard the panic beneath his irritation. He needed that money. Throughout the afternoon, the transformation continued. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, a floral arch positioned with precision, lighting rigs set to capture the golden hour. Everything calculated, everything performative. Around 2, guests began arriving. People I'd known for decades, colleagues from my architecture years, neighbors who had watched my son grow up, friends who had stood beside me at Laura's funeral. They moved through my home with a faint confusion, as if they had stepped into someone else's celebration. Mrs. Henderson from next door paused in the front hall. "Where are Laura's pictures?" she asked. I wanted to see the one from their anniversary. Emily appeared instantly, her smile fixed. "Oh, Mr. Carter wanted a fresh look for today. New beginnings, you know. Isn't it sweet?" Mrs. Henderson hesitated, unconvinced, then nodded politely. I watched Emily circulate, always aware of the cameras, always performing. At one point, she stopped beside the main videographer and spoke directly to him. "When his dad comes up to give the gift, I want you tight on his face. Close up. I want the tears. The algorithm really responds to emotional older men." My hands tightened on the windowsill. She was directing my humiliation, planning her shots, measuring engagement based on my pain. My phone vibrated. "Daniel, ready?" I texted back, "Ready." As 3 o'clock approached, I put on the charcoal suit, straightened my tie, and checked my reflection one last time. The shaved head still startled me, but I no longer flinched. I touched my jacket pocket and felt the folded blood test results inside. Proof. At 3:45, I left my room and walked to the top of the stairs. Below, my home had been completely transformed. Flowers everywhere, lights positioned at precise angles, 150 guests taking their seats, camera operators stationed strategically, Emily's phone already live streaming to thousands of unseen viewers. Everyone was in place for the performance of my son and Emily's carefully constructed day. No one knew I had a different script. I descended the stairs slowly, step by step, into the gathering crowd, into the camera's eye, into a wedding that wasn't truly a wedding at all, just a stage where the truth was about to step into the light. The ceremony began at 4. I sat in the first row beside Daniel. The garden was pristine, white chairs aligned perfectly, the floral arch framing the Atlantic. Behind us, the guests settled. I recognized nearly everyone. My gaze drifted back to the house. Through the open doors, I could see the entryway. The wall where Laura's photographs had hung for 20 years now held only a camera on a tripod, its red light blinking, recording the empty space where her memory should have been. The music began, a familiar classical piece that pulled an old memory to the surface, sharp and unwelcome. My son appeared first, walking confidently toward the arch, his suit perfectly tailored. He didn't look my way. Then Emily entered, moving slowly down the aisle, her dress trailing across the grass. Her bouquet was white roses and orchids, with a small camera lens hidden among the flowers. The live stream was active. Screens near the arch showed comments scrolling rapidly, admiration, envy, praise. The officiant welcomed everyone with practiced words about love and commitment. I wondered if he had any idea what kind of union he was blessing. My son read his vows from a card, promising partnership and honor. The words sounded empty to me, but the audience leaned in, moved. Several guests reached for tissues. Emily followed, speaking about soulmates and shared dreams, thanking my son for believing in her vision. The cameras captured every angle. The chat feed flooded with hearts. "You may now kiss the bride." Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. They walked back down the aisle, smiling and waving as the live viewership climbed into the thousands. The reception began immediately on the lawn. Tables were set, servers appeared with champagne, music drifted from hidden speakers. The best man spoke first, someone I barely knew, talking about ambition and success, joking about expenses. Polite laughter followed. The maid of honor came next, another influencer, her toast brief and polished, ending with a selfie mid-speech. Then my son stood and tapped his glass. The crowd fell silent. "This is the happiest day of my life," my son began, his voice carrying across the lawn, "and I couldn't have done any of this without my father." He looked straight at me. "After my mom passed, Dad sacrificed everything. He gave me every opportunity. He built the life I have." He paused, then smiled. "And now I'd like to invite him up to say a few words and present our gift." Applause rose immediately. Cameras swung in my direction. Daniel's hand rested briefly on my arm, a steadying touch. I stood and walked to the front, stopping beside my son. I took the microphone. I looked at him. I looked at Emily. I looked at the lenses pointed directly at my face, then at the guests, friends, neighbors, colleagues, all waiting. "Thank you all for being here today." I let the silence stretch, long enough for the crowd to lean in, long enough for the live chat on the screens to pause its constant scroll. "There's something I need to say. Something you all deserve to know." The quiet held. I scanned the faces. People who had known me for decades. People who had known Laura. "This morning," I said, "I woke up confused and in pain. When I touched my head, my hair was gone." A ripple moved through the crowd. Heads turned toward my son. I raised the note. This was on my nightstand. I read it slowly. "Dad, you look too old for the wedding video. I fixed it. You're welcome." I let every word land. My son stepped forward. "Dad, that was meant to be a surprise. Let me finish." My voice was steady, measured, built to carry. He sat back down. I also woke up with a severe headache, foggy. I couldn't remember how I'd gone to sleep. I pulled another paper from my jacket. "This is from Newport Urgent Care. Blood test results from this morning." I unfolded it and held it up so the cameras could see. "It shows benzodiazepines in my system, a sedative, roughly 2 to 3 tablets." The reaction was immediate. Guests stood. Murmurs turned into shouts. The live stream exploded with comments scrolling too fast to read. I raised my voice slightly. "My son brought me scotch last night. We drank together, or rather, I drank." He watched. My son stood again. "You're confused, Dad. You're old." "I'm an architect," I cut in. "I notice details." I nodded to Daniel, who stepped beside me with copies in hand. I held up the next document. "Like forged signatures, like unauthorized transfer orders." I paused. $500,000. I let the number hang. My supposed gift to them, except I never approved it. Color drained from my son's face. "The money has been frozen," I continued. "The bottle has been secured. The evidence is with my attorney." I looked at my son, then at Emily, then at the cameras capturing every second. "You wanted a gift. Here it is. The truth." My voice didn't shake. Years of presenting hard realities had taught me how to deliver them without flinching. My son drugged me, shaved my head while I was unconscious, and attempted to steal $500,000. I placed the microphone on the table. The lawn erupted into chaos. Guests shouted questions. Some turned to leave. Others raised their phones. The live stream became a wall of disbelief. Someone near the screens shouted that follower counts were dropping. I glanced once. Emily's numbers were falling in real time, hundreds, then thousands vanishing as people processed what they were watching. Emily reached for her phone. My son grabbed for my arm. I stepped back. Daniel moved between us. "Don't." I turned toward the house. The crowd parted as I walked. A few people began clapping, slow and uncertain, the sound growing as I passed. Others simply stared. I didn't look at the cameras. I didn't look at the screens. I didn't look back at my son or Emily or the wreckage of their carefully staged performance. I walked across the lawn toward the drive where my car waited. Behind me, I heard my son's voice rising. "Dad, Dad, wait." I kept walking. I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. The truth had been delivered. Arthur drove. I sat in the passenger seat, watching Newport slide past the window. quiet streets, families finishing dinner, unaware of what had just unfolded. "How do you feel?" Daniel asked. "I don't know yet." His phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Alerts. He glanced down. "It's everywhere." "I don't want to see it." We drove on in silence. The police station was a low brick building on Broadway. We arrived just after 6. A detective met us in a small conference room, calm, professional, experienced. I gave my formal statement: assault, drugging, attempted theft. Daniel laid out the evidence, the note, the sealed bottle, the blood test results, the forged documents. The detective reviewed each item carefully, asking precise questions about timing and intent. Finally, he looked at me. "What you did today was brave." "I told the truth," I said. "That's why it was brave." He nodded. "We'll conduct a full investigation. These are serious offenses." We returned home around 7. The estate was dark. The guests were gone. Vendors had packed up and disappeared. What remained was debris, chairs scattered across the lawn, half-full glasses, wilted flowers drooping from the arch. Inside, the house felt hollow. I moved through the rooms, turning on lights. In the hall closet, behind stacked linens, I found them. Laura's photographs, hidden away. I carried them back and rehung them, one by one. Laura on our wedding day, Laura in the garden, Laura holding a newborn son. I stepped back when the last frame was in place. Daniel appeared in the doorway. I made tea, Earl Grey, a ritual we'd shared for decades. We carried the cups out to the back porch and sat facing the ocean. The Atlantic was dark, visible only where the waves caught the light. The sound was steady, constant. Daniel's phone lit up again on the table. Headlines scrolled past. He looked at me. "Do you want to know what they're saying?" I shook my head. "No, it doesn't matter anymore." We drank our tea in silence. Finally, I spoke. "I lost my son today." Arthur set his cup down. "You lost him a long time ago, Vincent. Today you just stopped pretending." The words landed with the weight of truth, not cruel, just accurate. We sat there until the tea grew cold. At 10 o'clock, Arthur left. He squeezed my shoulder at the door and said, "Call if you need anything." I locked the door behind him, turned off the downstairs lights, and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. I looked at the bed. My bed. In my house. I lay down. No sedatives. No fear. No pretending. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. People say time heals all wounds. I've learned that time doesn't heal. It provides distance, and with distance comes perspective. The days after were quiet. I blocked Travis's number, not out of anger, but necessity. I needed space without constant messages asking me to reconsider, to forgive, to understand. The police investigation moved forward. The evidence was ironclad. Within 2 weeks, charges were filed. Assault, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud. Travis lost his investors. His projects collapsed. The bank called in his debts. Amber lost her sponsors. Her follower count dropped from nearly 1 million to the low thousands within days. Brands distanced themselves overnight. I felt no satisfaction, only a strange, hollow relief. Arthur suggested therapy. I resisted at first, but I went. Week after week, I talked about guilt, about enabling, about the difference between loving someone and protecting them from reality. Arthur kept showing up. Weekly dinners became a ritual. He never pushed. He was simply there, steady, when everything else felt uncertain. After a few months, I made a decision. I kept my head shaved, not because Travis had taken my hair, but because I chose to. It became mine again. A statement, not a violation. I looked in the mirror one morning and thought, this is who I am now. Honest. Around month 4, I started consulting with elder advocacy organizations. I wanted to know if what happened to me was common. It was. I met others whose children had forged signatures, drained accounts, isolated them from friends. Financial exploitation by family wasn't an anomaly. It was an epidemic. One evening, I told Arthur, we should do something. He didn't ask what. He just said, agreed. We researched support centers, legal aid models, victim resources. We decided to build something. 1 year later, September again. The Carter Pembroke Elder Advocacy Center sits on Temp Street, 3 blocks from the water. The sign outside is modest. Inside are comfortable chairs, good coffee, and a quiet space where people can speak without judgment. I volunteer 3 times a week. I share my story when needed. When someone walks in, scared, ashamed, convinced they're the only one whose family has done this, I listen. Arthur handles the legal side, free consultations, free representation for those who can't afford it. People come carrying the same weight I once carried. They speak in quiet voices. They apologize for taking our time. I don't judge. I offer resources, therapists, financial advisors, attorneys, support groups. I tell them, you're not alone. You're not overreacting. You deserve protection. Today, I'm recording this story in that office. The afternoon light comes through the window, warm and golden. It reminds me of the light on the wedding day a year ago. I'm not telling this for pity. I'm telling it because silence protects abusers. Because someone listening needs to hear this. You are not alone. Because love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. My hair never fully grew back. Age and genetics. But my voice did. But I keep it shaved by choice. It's not what they took. It's what I chose to keep. 3 months ago, my son reached out through his attorney. He wanted reconciliation. He needed support. I sent one reply through Arthur. I'm here if you take responsibility, but I won't fund your avoidance. No response followed. I've made peace with that. You can't save someone who won't save themselves. The pain is still real. Some mornings I wake and feel the loss of the son I thought I had. But there's also relief, freedom, honesty. Arthur has become the family I chose, the kind built on respect, not obligation. And I found purpose. The center helps dozens every month. We've frozen fraudulent transactions, filed protective orders, connected victims with resources. That matters. If you're listening and you've experienced something similar, it's never too late to set boundaries. Love yourself enough to protect yourself. Family is not permission to violate. If you're watching a parent enable a child who's hurting them, sometimes the kindest thing is to stop rescuing. Let consequences teach what love cannot. Some endings are really beginnings. This was mine. Thank you for listening. Looking back on this journey, I see what I couldn't see then. I had enabled my son for years, hoping love alone would change him. Don't make my mistake. Don't confuse love with surrender. God gave me the strength to speak the truth when silence felt safer. God placed Arthur in my path when I needed a witness, and God reminded me through every painful step that protecting yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. These grandparent stories, the hard ones, the ones we don't want to tell, they matter. Family stories shouldn't be buried in shame. They should be shared so others know they're not alone. That's why I'm adding my voice to all the other grandparent stories being told, because silence protects abusers. If you're in a situation like mine, ask God for courage, set boundaries, seek help. You deserve protection, even from those you love. And to those watching parents enable toxic children, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let consequences teach what mercy cannot. These grandparent stories, these family stories, they're not just mine, they're ours. Share them, learn from them. Final note, this content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the core lessons about recognizing financial and emotional abuse are real.